on Goblin Reddit. Today's story is...
My mother-in-law from hell invaded my home and my marriage. After months of abuse, instant karma came when I finally took control of my life. Hi everyone, I am Lailani, 33, female, and I have been married to Danny, 33, male, for 2 years. Our marriage has generally been stable, although we have faced some challenges. One of the most significant has been my relationship with Camilla, 53, female, Danny's mother, who has never accepted me. From the beginning, she made it perfectly clear to me that she did not like me and did not consider me good enough for her son. About a year ago, Camilla lost her job and was unable to find a new one. She quickly exhausted her savings and found herself without resources. At that point, Danny insisted that, as a good wife, I should allow her mother to live with us. Initially, I hesitated, but how could I refuse? The alternatives were to send her mother to a care home or leave her homeless, and I didn't want to be seen as the villain in that situation. However, it soon became clear that this living arrangement would not work. From the moment she moved in, she began to criticize absolutely everything I did. If I made dinner, she complained that it wasn't made the way she used to make it for Danny. If I cleaned the house, she would scold me for using the wrong products or for neglecting areas she considered important. She treated me as if I were a beginner with no experience of running a household, even though Danny and I had lived perfectly well before she arrived. She also started to appropriate all the spaces. Suddenly, my kitchen became her territory. She went through my cupboards and reorganized everything according to her preferences. I could no longer find anything. My spice rack was completely messed up, and she threw away some of my favorite ingredients because, according to her, they gave off an unpleasant smell. When I confronted her about this, she acted as if I were ungrateful for her help. Then came the unsolicited parenting advice, even though we don't even have children. Every time I would see Danny and we would share a moment together, she would sigh loudly and say things like, "A real wife would have already given my little boy a child." She would drop hints at family gatherings asking when I would have a grandchild, implying that I was responsible for the fact that we hadn't started a family yet. She even organized meetings for Danny with her childhood friends who had children, saying, quote, "Maybe this will inspire you too." And not to mention the situation with the laundry. She took it upon herself to do our laundry, which initially seemed like a kind gesture but quickly turned into a nightmare. She would wash all my delicates together with Danny's heavy work clothes, ruining some of my favorite pieces. And on top of that, she had the audacity to blame me for buying low-quality fabrics. She even started folding our underwear and organizing it in separate drawers. It was incredibly invasive and uncomfortable. Privacy became a thing of the past. He would enter our bedroom whenever he felt like it, with the excuse of needing something. I had to start locking the door, and even then he would constantly knock if he needed anything. On one occasion he came in while I was changing, and had the nerve to be offended that I was in my underwear in my own bedroom. She also had opinions about every purchase I made. If I came home with new clothes, she would make fun of me, saying things like, "Spending your husband's hard-earned money again." If I ordered takeaway after a tiring day at work, she would make passive-aggressive comments about my supposed laziness to cook. Worst of all, Danny never really stood up for me. She would just let these situations pass and say things like, "That's just how she is," or "She doesn't mean it." There came a point when I dreaded going home. I started staying late at work just to avoid running into her. I looked for excuses to run unnecessary errands, just to have a moment of peace. My home no longer felt like my own. It was as if I were living in someone else's house, tiptoeing around so as not to set off the landmine that was my mother-in-law. And the icing on the cake? She acted like the queen of the house. She took over the living room, watching what she wanted on the television and turning up the volume. If I wanted to watch something, I would sigh dramatically and say, "I suppose I can retire to my room if you really don't mind my entertainment." She even took my favorite blanket, the one I've had for years, and claimed it as her own, saying it was too good to be wasted on me. Every time I tried to set limits, she reacted as if I were attacking her. She would get teary-eyed and run off with Danny, making me look like the bad guy. And of course, Danny would say, "Just try to get along with her, honey. She's going through a difficult time." I was reaching my limit, but What choice did I have? She had nowhere else to go. I tried to talk to Danny, but when it comes to his mother, he turns a complete blind eye. I don't know what influence she has over him, but he simply cannot see the inappropriateness of her behavior, and this is starting to seriously affect my mental health. Every time I try to explain how I feel about the way Camilla treats me, Danny plays it down. He says I'm too sensitive or that I should be more patient with her, especially as she's been going through a tough time, but nothing changes. He keeps taking her side, and I feel like I'm the one who has to put up with all her inappropriate behavior. The situation is becoming really untenable. However, Camilla definitely crossed the line last week, and I think that was my breaking point. You see, Danny and I have been trying to have a baby for some time. It's something we were really looking forward to, but a few months ago I got pregnant, and we were extremely excited. Unfortunately, I lost the pregnancy last month. It was a truly devastating moment for me, and I was still trying to process everything when Camilla moved in. I didn't really feel ready to deal with any more situations, and I felt like I didn't have the space to properly process my grief. I tried to stay strong, but I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and I just didn't feel like myself. Last week, I had a particularly long and difficult day at work. I came home hoping to at least receive some comfort from Danny and maybe have a moment of peace and quiet to myself. But when I walked in, Danny and Camilla were sitting at the table having dinner together. They hadn't saved any food for me. I was really hungry and had been really looking forward to a hot meal, but there was nothing for me. I went into the kitchen and asked Danny, "Is there any food left for me?" He just looked at Camilla and remained silent. It was then that Camilla intervened, saying, "Well, I didn't know what time you were going to get home, so I didn't prepare anything for you." I couldn't believe it. I was too tired to argue, so I just grabbed some bread and jam from the kitchen and retired to my room. I was annoyed, but I didn't have the energy to say anything else. All I wanted was to get some rest and not think about how everything in my life seemed to be falling apart. But I couldn't even manage that. The next morning, I woke up still feeling exhausted. I went downstairs hoping for a moment of peace and a good cup of coffee, just to regain some energy to face the day, but of course Camilla was already up and sitting at the kitchen table. I started drinking my coffee, hoping she would just leave me alone, but then I heard her muttering about how coffee is bad for your health. At that moment, I had reached my limit. I was already tired, hungry, and irritated. I tried to ignore her, but then she said something that made me explode. She told me that I never listened to anyone, and that was why I had lost my pregnancy. I was paralyzed for a moment, unable to believe what I was hearing. I couldn't imagine her saying something so cruel, especially considering everything I had been going through. I was still processing the loss, trying to heal emotionally, and there she was, blaming me for something that was completely out of my control. I was in shock. I just couldn't let it go. I asked her, "Who do you think you are? By what right do you talk to me like that?" She gave me a cold look and replied, "I can talk to you like that because you are the reason I don't have a grandchild yet." That was it. That was the moment I exploded. I was so angry I could feel the blood boiling in my veins. I demanded she be quiet and walked away for a moment to compose myself, but I was furious. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't want to shout, but I couldn't contain myself any longer. I wanted to express to her how hurtful and disrespectful she was being, how much she was pushing me to my limit, but I didn't know where to start. Of course, Danny heard the shouting. She came down to see what was happening. I told her exactly what Camilla had said. I was trembling, trying to keep my voice steady, but I was so angry. I just wanted her to see how unacceptable it was, how completely out of order her mother's behavior was. And then Danny said that I should just ignore her because she is older and wants a grandchild. He said that I should understand that she is upset and wants to be part of our lives, and that I should just allow her to talk like that because she is his mother. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was as if he was telling me that my feelings didn't matter, that Camilla's feelings and desires were more important than any pain I was going through. It felt like a slap in the face. I had just experienced one of the most painful moments of my life, and he was on his mother's side instead of supporting me, his wife. He wasn't even trying to defend me or tell him that what he had said was wrong. He was just saying, "She's older, she wants a grandchild, you should let it go." I was fed up. I couldn't take it anymore. I said to him, "If that's how you feel, then maybe you should leave me because I can't get pregnant again." The words came out of my mouth before I could stop them. I didn't mean it that way, but it just came out in the heat of the moment, and the worst part was that it was true. I couldn't conceive again. I gathered my belongings, took my things, and left the house. I didn't even know where I was going, but I couldn't stay there. I couldn't stay in a place where I felt so disrespected and unappreciated. I felt that Danny had chosen his mother over me, and that was something I couldn't accept. So I left and ended up at a friend's house. Now I'm sitting here, still trying to work out what to do next. I never wanted to hurt Danny, but I was so angry and hurt by what he and his mother were doing. Maybe I shouldn't have revealed that I couldn't get pregnant again in that way and should have waited for the right moment, but I had reached my limit. I had tried to explain my feelings and nothing had changed. So here I am, I ask myself, am I wrong for what I did? I know I'm angry, but was it excessive to leave like that? Did I overreact? I feel that maybe I was wrong, but at the same time, I just couldn't continue to allow Camilla to treat me that way and Danny to simply ignore it. What do you think? Update 1. Hi everyone, first of all, thank you for all the comments on my previous post. Many of you thought that I acted wrongly by not telling Danny about my inability to get pregnant before. I want to try to clarify a few things. I fully understand your perspectives and I understand why you feel this way, but honestly the situation is much more complex than it probably seems. The reality is that I needed time to process everything before discussing it with Danny. I mean, how do you approach a subject like this? It's not an easy thing to communicate, and I didn't feel ready to share it when I first got the news. I found out that I wouldn't be able to conceive again less than a week before Camilla moved in with us. It was too much to take in, and I was still trying to understand how I was supposed to continue with my life. I felt like my world had completely fallen apart. And then, on top of all this, Camilla moved into our house. I don't know if you can understand, but I was completely overwhelmed and didn't know how to process the whole situation, let alone talk about it with Danny. But yes, I do understand now that I shouldn't have said what I said to Danny to him, especially in front of him. I was so angry at the time that I let it all out. I recognize that this was not the right way to handle it, and I deeply regret my reaction. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, but I honestly didn't know how to deal with it all, especially with her present in the house. After everything that had happened, Danny called me 2 days ago. He was clearly upset, I could tell from his voice, but I was still too angry to have a conversation with him. I told him I would send him a message when I had calmed down and could have a constructive conversation. I needed space to reflect on everything, and I wasn't ready to say anything I might regret later. This morning, I finally called him. I had been thinking about it a lot and felt ready to talk, although I knew it would be a difficult conversation. He came to see me at my friend's house. I wasn't sure what to expect, but we sat down and started talking. I explained exactly what the doctor had told me about my inability to conceive again. When I finished, he asked me why I hadn't told him before. He looked hurt and confused. I could see it in his eyes. I was hurting too, but I knew I had to explain my reasons. I told him the truth. I didn't want to burden him with this news when the situation with his mother was already so complicated. I knew how important starting a family was to him, and I wasn't sure how to tell him that I wouldn't be able to give him that gift, especially with Camilla already living under our roof. The timing just seemed terribly inappropriate. I didn't know how to address such a delicate issue while dealing with her constant presence in our home. I couldn't find a way to talk to him about it and simultaneously handle the situation with her. It seemed like an impossible task. Initially, he was silent for a moment. Then he told me he understood. I'm not entirely sure if he was just trying to be sympathetic or if he was really taking in all the information, but I appreciated his effort to understand. I needed him to understand, especially because everything to do with Camilla had been extremely complicated. But then I told him something that I knew would be difficult for him to accept. I told him firmly that I would not return home until Camilla left. I was blunt. I didn't want to continue with that situation. I felt that I had tried all possible alternatives and nothing was changing. I needed him to choose. It was either her or me. I was fed up of living in an environment where I felt suffocated, disrespected, and constantly belittled. I couldn't go on like this. I didn't want to be seen as the antagonist, but I knew I had to draw this line for my own mental health. As expected, Danny didn't take this condition well. He argued that he couldn't just throw his mother out on the street. I understand, I really do. I know that Camilla is his mother and he is trying to be a good son, but I could no longer tolerate the situation. I explained to him that if he really cared about me, he would have to make arrangements for her. It was time for a change, and I wasn't going to go back to a life where I felt I had no voice in my own home. He left. We haven't spoken since. I haven't heard from him, not even a text message. I don't know what he's thinking, and, to be honest, I'm scared. I'm scared that he'll choose her over me, that he'll think I'm being unreasonable, but I also feel that I can't keep sacrificing my happiness for the sake of his mother's comfort. I've put up with too much for too long. I've reached my limit. I keep thinking about all the things I said, wondering if I could have handled it better. I didn't want to hurt Danny, but I couldn't go on living like this. I feel guilty for leaving, but I also feel it was the only way to make him see how serious the situation was. I hope he will reconsider and understand that I am not asking for anything unreasonable. I just need space, respect, and a chance to heal, but at the moment I'm not sure what will happen. So this is where I currently stand. I don't know what's next, but I wanted to keep you updated on the events following my previous post. Thank you for all the support and comments, even if they have been difficult to take in. I guess I just need to figure out how to move forward, whatever the path may be. Update 2. Hi everyone, it's been a month since my last update, but honestly it's been a real emotional roller coaster. I needed time to process everything and clarify my current situation. After Danny left my friend's house, I stayed with her for a while, and it was honestly comforting to enjoy some peace and quiet. It gave me a chance to just breathe and reflect on everything that had happened. I had to ask my friend to go to my house to collect some of my belongings, such as clothes and personal items. I didn't feel ready to go back there yet, and I needed her to help me with that task. However, when my friend visited my house, things didn't exactly go well. Camilla was there, and as expected, she was not at all pleased. She started shouting at my friend, telling her to take everything she could quickly because she had no intention of leaving soon. I couldn't believe it. Camilla was still behaving as if she owned the place, trying to maintain control over everything, even though I wasn't even there. My friend felt really uncomfortable, but she managed to get what she needed without confronting Camilla. I felt tremendously frustrated to see that Camilla still thought she could behave that way. Meanwhile, Danny and I were having telephone conversations, trying to determine the next steps to take. It was extremely difficult to have these discussions with him. We were both upset, but we were also trying to work together to find a solution. After long conversations and numerous discussions, we finally decided that the best thing for everyone would be to rent Camilla a small studio or a one-bedroom apartment where she could live independently. Both Danny and I have good jobs, so money was not an issue. It seemed like a reasonable solution. She would have her own space, and I would get mine back, which was exactly what I needed. But, naturally, it wasn't as simple as that. When we put the plan to Camilla, she completely disagreed. She started crying every night, regretting that her own son was doing this to her. It was heartbreaking for Danny, that much was clear. He was torn between his mother and me, and every time she cried, he seemed to lose a part of himself. It was really difficult to witness, but I also knew that I couldn't just let her continue in our house. I had already given in too much. I couldn't continue living in an environment where I felt completely suffocated. We started to look for apartments together, and Danny and Camilla would visit them while I stayed out of the way. Honestly, I didn't want to be around her. I couldn't deal with her constant negativity and refusal to accept the situation. In every place they visited, Camilla found something wrong. The kitchen was too small. The bathroom didn't meet her standards, or she didn't like the color of the walls. It was as if she wasn't even trying to make this solution work. I couldn't believe it. She was extremely demanding, but at the same time, she refused to leave our house and give us the space we needed. Honestly, I was starting to get the feeling that she simply didn't care about anything, except staying with us. I have made it clear to Danny that I do not wish to see Camilla during this process. I have told her that I will not participate in any of this because every time I am around her, I feel that things only get worse. It's as if she deliberately pushes all my limits and I just can't handle it anymore. Danny has been understanding up to a point, but I can tell it's also difficult for him. He wants to please everyone, but I think he is beginning to understand that it is impossible to please us both simultaneously. So this is where we are at the moment. We have been looking for places for Camilla, and the process has been drawn out because she refuses to accept any option. I am beginning to question whether she will ever agree to move out, or whether she will continue to try to manipulate Danny into keeping her with us. I can't even imagine how the situation will evolve from here, but the only thing I know for sure is that I need space, and I need her to be out of our lives for good. I can't continue living in circumstances where I constantly have to be extremely cautious. It's been difficult. There's still a part of me that feels sorry for Camilla, but there's a bigger part that just longs for peace in my own home. I have tried to be patient, really, but at this point I'm not sure how much more I can take. I love Danny, but I also have to look after my own well-being. I'm not sure how this will all work out, but I hope things will improve soon. I will keep you posted as the situation evolves. Again, thank you for all the support and advice. It really means a lot to me. Update 3. Hi everyone. It's been about 4 months since my last update, and I know many of you have been wondering how the situation turned out. I finally have some news to share. I've really been reflecting a lot during this time, and it seems like the months have flown by, although the stage has felt like an endless emotional roller coaster. After weeks and weeks of apartment hunting, Camilla finally accepted a place. It was a small studio located about 10 minutes from our house. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't particularly thrilled with the location, but at the time, I just felt relieved. We had gotten something. It wasn't ideal, but I accepted it as a necessary compromise. I didn't want to keep arguing about it. The important thing was that she would have her own space, and it seemed that she had at least agreed to move out, although I didn't feel completely comfortable with the proximity of her new residence. Now, I'm sure many of you are wondering if I had forgiven Camilla or if our relationship had improved, but that's not really the case. I made it very clear to Danny that, even though Camilla was moving in, that didn't mean she could just turn up at our house whenever she wanted. I firmly explained that she would not be welcome in our home without an express invitation, and if he wanted to see her, he could visit her at her new residence. I was extremely emphatic on this point, because I needed to reclaim my space. I needed things to go back to normal between Danny and I, and having her constantly present in our lives would never be part of that scenario. But let me tell you, Camilla was not willing to give up without a fight. After moving out, she didn't just calmly go on with her life. No. She started using other strategies to try to get Danny to spend more time with her and stay by her side. She got several of our relatives involved, calling Danny and me, trying to make us feel guilty about letting him come back to the house. She would say things like, "How can you be so insensitive to your own mother? And I'm your only family, don't you care about me?" Honestly, it was exhausting. It didn't stop there. Camilla even resorted to the health strategy. She started calling Danny, telling him that her health was deteriorating and that she needed him to look after her. She tried to make him feel guilty so that he would stay with her, suggesting that she didn't know how much time she had left to live. It was as if she thought that by playing the victim, she would somehow manage to move back in with us. Honestly, it was exhausting, and I could see it was affecting Danny. I had to remind her that she couldn't allow her to manipulate her like that. It wasn't healthy for either of us, and the reality was that she needed to learn to stand up for herself. I won't pretend it was easy. It was complicated, especially for Danny. She's a kind person, and I could see how torn she felt, but she stood her ground. She didn't give in, and eventually Camilla began to back down. It was as if she understood that she couldn't keep using these tactics to control us, and you know what? That was an immense relief. About a month ago, I finally moved back home. I had been staying with a friend for quite a while, but I knew I needed to go back, especially as the situation with Camilla had calmed down slightly. I needed to get back into a normal routine. Returning was simultaneously comforting and strange. It was as if things were finally returning to normal with Danny, but a certain tension still persisted, particularly because we hadn't completely resolved everything related to the possibility of surrogacy. Speaking of which, Danny and I have been talking more about the possibility of seeking surrogacy. I'm still not completely convinced, to be honest. It's a significant step, and I'm not entirely sure if it's the right choice for us, but I've been thinking about it a lot, and I know Danny is seriously interested. We've had some deep conversations about what it would mean for us as a couple, and I can see how much he longs to start his own family, but I'm also still processing everything that's happened in the last few months. It's a lot to take in. We're not rushing into any decisions, but it's a possibility we're considering, and I'll keep you posted on what we decide. So yes, this will be my last update. Things are quiet now, and I feel like we are on the right track, even if there is still some uncertainty. I just wanted to thank everyone for their support and advice during these difficult months. You have all helped me enormously to process this situation, and I really appreciate having been able to count on your opinions. I hope that, regardless of what the future holds, we can all move forward with greater clarity and serenity. Thank you again, and take good care of yourselves.